She looked at his hoodie, then at his skin, and decided he didn't belong in first class. Victoria St. Clair thought she was the queen of the sky, screaming at a man she assumed was a seat filler to get back to the zoo. The entire cabin went deadly silent. She thought she had the power. She thought her husband's money made her untouchable. But she didn't know that the man she was spitting on wasn't just a passenger. He was the man who signed the paychecks. When he finally spoke, 3 words destroyed her entire life. You won't believe the karma that hit her next. The air inside the private VIP lounge at JFK International Airport usually smelled of expensive scotch, old leather, and the kind of silence that costs $10,000 a year to access. But on this rainy Tuesday in November, Marcus Thorne was more interested in the coffee. Marcus sat in the far corner of the lounge, obscured by the shadow of a large potted fern. He didn't look like the other patrons. While the men around him wore bespoke Italian suits and constantly checked their Rolexes, Marcus wore a charcoal grey hoodie, a pair of worn-in denim jeans, and unassuming sneakers. If you looked closely, you might notice the sneakers were limited edition prototypes worth more than a mid-sized sedan. But people like Victoria St. Clair never looked closely at things they deemed beneath them. Marcus was 38, black, and possessed a stillness that often unsettled people. He was typing away on a battered laptop, analyzing a spreadsheet that would make most Wall Street bankers weep with anxiety. "More coffee, sir." The waitress, a kind woman named Eleanor, who had been working the lounge for 15 years, hovered with a silver pot. "Please, Eleanor." Marcus smiled, closing his laptop. "And how is your daughter's violin recital coming along?" Eleanor beamed, pouring the dark roast. "Oh, Mr. Thorne, you remembered. She's nervous, but she's ready. You're sure you want to fly commercial today? I know the company jet is in the hangar." Marcus took a sip. "I need to see it from the ground level, Elena. We're finalizing the acquisition of Horizon Air today at 5 after p.m. I need to know what I'm buying before the ink is dry. No special treatment. To the crew on Flight 492, I'm just a guy in Seat 1A. A guy in a hoodie in Seat 1A, Elena teased gently. They're going to judge you, you know. Let them, Marcus said, his eyes darkening slightly. That's exactly what I'm counting on. I need to see how they treat the people they think don't matter. Marcus Thorne was not merely wealthy. He was the CEO of Thorne Holdings, a quiet conglomerate that had slowly absorbed logistics companies, shipping lanes, and now luxury aviation. He was a self-made billionaire who had grown up in the projects of Chicago, a math prodigy who had clawed his way up through code, then hardware, then infrastructure. He despised bullies. He despised inefficiency, and he was about to step into a metal tube at 30,000 feet where he would encounter the worst of both. His phone buzzed. It was his lawyer, David. Text. Papers are ready. Signatures required upon landing in London. You sure about this route? Horizon's service ratings have tanked in the last quarter. Marcus typed back. That's why I'm flying. See you in London. He finished his coffee, tipped Elena $100. She tried to refuse, he insisted, and picked up his modest backpack. He walked out of the lounge, blending into the crowd. He moved with the easy confidence of a predator who doesn't need to roar to let you know he's there. As he reached the gate for Flight 492 to London Heathrow, the atmosphere shifted. The gate lice were already hovering, and standing at the front of the priority boarding lane, tapping a manicured fingernail against a platinum credit card, was a woman who looked like she was already late for an appointment with destiny. She was blonde, severe, and dressed in a white Chanel power suit that looked like it cost more than the flight attendants made in a year. She was barking into her phone, oblivious to the people maneuvering around her massive Louis Vuitton carry-on. "I don't care, Richard," she screamed, her voice cutting through the terminal chatter. "I don't care if the merger is stressful. I'm going to London for Fashion Week, and I need the house prepped. If that maid hasn't dusted the chandelier, fire her. God, why is everyone so incompetent?" Marcus stood 3 feet behind her, his noise-cancelling headphones around his neck. He watched her hang up the phone and snap her fingers at the gate agent. "Boarding, now," she commanded. "I have a pre-flight meeting." The gate agent, a tired-looking man named Greg, forced a smile. "We are just waiting for the cabin crew to give the all-clear, Mrs. St. Clair. It will be just another moment." "I am a Diamond Medallion member," she hissed. "My husband is Richard St. Clair. Do you know who that is? He's worth more than this entire terminal." Marcus adjusted his backpack. He knew Richard St. Clair. Richard ran a mid-tier hedge fund that was currently over-leveraged and desperately trying to get bought out by a larger firm. Specifically, Marcus's firm. This was going to be an interesting flight. The boarding call for first class finally came. Mrs. St. Clair didn't wait for the announcement to finish. She bulldozed past the elderly couple in front of her, her oversized bag nearly taking out the man's cane. Marcus waited. He let the elderly couple go. He let a mother with a crying infant go. Then he scanned his digital boarding pass, Group 1, and walked down the jet bridge. The cool air of the tunnel smelled of jet fuel and rain. It was a smell Marcus usually loved, the scent of progress. Today, it felt like a warning. He stepped onto the plane. "Welcome aboard," the flight attendant at the door said. She was young. Her name tag read Sarah, and she looked exhausted. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. He turned left toward the nose of the plane. First class. The cabin was configured with lie-flat pods. It was luxury, but it was aging. The leather was cracked in places. The carpet was slightly frayed. Marcus noted this mentally. Refurbishment needed immediately. Budget allocation, $50 million. He found his seat. 1A, the prime spot. The seat that offered the most privacy and the best service. He stowed his backpack in the overhead bin, sat down, and pulled out a book. He didn't ask for a drink. He didn't demand a pillow. He just wanted to read. 5 minutes later, a whirlwind of white Chanel and aggressive perfume stormed into the cabin. Victoria St. Clair had been held up in the galley complaining about the temperature of the champagne before she even sat down. She marched down the aisle, scanning the seat numbers. She stopped at row 1. She looked at her boarding pass. She looked at Marcus. She looked at her boarding pass again. "Excuse me," she said. It wasn't a request. It was an accusation. Marcus looked up from his book. "Yes." "You are in my seat." Marcus glanced at the digital display on the rim of the pod. It clearly read 1A. He checked his ticket on his phone. 1A. "I don't think so, Mum," Marcus said calmly. "I'm in 1A. Check your boarding pass." Victoria's face flushed a dangerous shade of crimson. She didn't check her pass. She simply glared at him, her eyes scanning his hoodie, his dark skin, his relaxed posture. To her, he didn't look like a first-class passenger. He looked like an error in the system. "I don't need to check my pass," she snapped, her voice raising an octave, drawing the attention of the 6 other passengers in the cabin. "I always sit in 1A. My husband's assistant books 1A. You must be mistaken. Let me see your ticket." "I'm not showing you my ticket," Marcus said, turning back to his book. "I showed it to the gate agent. That's enough." The audacity of his dismissal stunned her. She stood frozen for a second, her mouth slightly open. Then the rage kicked in. "Listen to me, you person," she spat. "I don't know how you snuck in here, or if you used some kind of employee miles or affirmative action lottery ticket, but this is first class. This is for paying customers, people who contribute to society." The cabin went quiet. The ambient hum of the engines seemed to vanish. Across the aisle, a businessman in a suit lowered his newspaper. Marcus slowly closed his book. He placed it on the tray table. He looked Victoria St. Clair dead in the eyes. "I paid for this seat," Marcus said, his voice low and even. "Just like you paid for yours. Which I assume is 1B, the empty one right across the aisle." Victoria looked at seat 1B. It was indeed empty. It was identical to 1A. But that wasn't the point. The point was dominance. The point was that a man who looked like Marcus was sitting in the seat she wanted, and he wasn't obeying her. "I don't want 1B, she declared loudly. "I want 1A. It has better window alignment. And I don't want to sit across from someone like you. I won't feel safe. I won't be able to sleep knowing someone from the street is watching me." "Ma'am," a voice came from behind her. It was Sarah, the flight attendant. She looked terrified. Dealing with Victoria St. Clair was a nightmare scenario for any crew member. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" Sarah asked, clutching her manifest. "Yes, there is a massive problem." Victoria turned on the stewardess, pointing a finger at Marcus. "This man is in my seat, and he is refusing to move, and quite frankly, he doesn't belong in this cabin. I want to see his ticket. I want you to check if he actually paid for it." Sarah looked at Marcus. She saw a calm, well-composed man. She looked at his name on the manifest. Thorne, Monsieur Status. "VIP. Mrs. St. Clair," Sarah said gently. "Mr. Thorne is in his assigned seat. You are assigned to seat 1B. Please, we need to close the cabin doors for departure." "I am not sitting in 1B, Victoria screamed, stomping her foot like a toddler in a tiara. "And I am certainly not sitting next to him. He smells like weed. He smells like trouble. Look at him. He's wearing a hoodie. Since when does Horizon Air allow thugs in first class?" The insult hung in the air, toxic and undeniable. Marcus hadn't moved. He hadn't blinked. But inside, the calculator was running. He was memorizing her face. He was memorizing the way the crew was reacting, fearful, unsupported, untrained for de-escalation. "I don't smell like weed, ma'am," Marcus said, his voice ice-cold. "I smell like Santal 33 and patience, and my patience is running low." "Don't you speak to me!" Victoria shrieked. She grabbed her heavy Chanel bag and swung it, intending to drop it onto seat 1B, but accidentally letting it swing wide. The heavy metal clasp of the bag smashed into Marcus's shoulder. It wasn't a hard blow, but it was assault. The businessman across the aisle stood up. "Hey, that's enough!" "Sit down!" Victoria yelled at the businessman. She turned back to Sarah. "Get the captain. Now. I want this man removed. I am Richard St. Clair's wife, and I will not fly with a criminal in the seat next to me. Either he goes, or I buy this airline and fire all of you." Marcus touched his shoulder where the bag had hit him. He looked at Sarah. "You might want to get the captain," Marcus said to Sarah. "She's right about one thing. This plane isn't leaving with both of us on it." The cockpit door opened. Captain James Anderson stepped out. He was a man in his late 50s, with silver hair and the kind of jawline that suggested he spent more time golfing than worrying about customer service protocols. He adjusted his hat and frowned at the commotion in the first-class cabin. The plane was still at the gate, but the delay was already ticking past 15 minutes. Ground crew were radioing, asking why the jet bridge hadn't retracted. "What is going on here?" Captain Anderson demanded, his voice booming. He looked at Sarah, who was visibly shaking, and then at Victoria, who was hyperventilating for dramatic effect. "Captain!" Victoria lunged at him, grabbing his arm. "Thank God. Someone with authority. This stewardess is useless. She is letting a squatter hijack seat 1A." Anderson looked at Marcus. He took in the hoodie. He took in the sneakers. He didn't recognize the sneakers either. He saw a youngish black man sitting in the most expensive seat on the plane, looking defiant. Captain Anderson sighed. He had flown Richard St. Clair many times. He knew the name. He knew the money. He knew that complaints from Platinum Diamond members caused paperwork. Complaints from guys in hoodies usually just disappeared. "Sir," the captain addressed Marcus, skipping the pleasantries. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" Marcus held up his phone again. The screen was bright. Seat 1A, Marcus Thorne. The captain looked at it. It was valid. But Victoria was vibrating with rage next to him. "Captain, he stole that ticket!" Victoria lied effortlessly. "Or he bullied the gate agent. Look at him. Does he look like he can afford a $12,000 ticket? He's probably a drug dealer. I don't feel safe. I demand you check his ID against the credit card used to book the flight." This was highly irregular. Once a passenger is boarded and the ticket is scanned, the transaction is done. But Captain Anderson was tired. He wanted to take off. He wanted the screaming blonde woman to shut up. "Sir," the captain said, his voice hardening. "Do you have the credit card used to book this flight?" Marcus looked at the captain with profound disappointment. This was the leadership. This was the man entrusted with hundreds of lives. A man who bowed to the loudest voice rather than the truth. "Captain," Marcus said, "I am sitting in my assigned seat. This woman just assaulted me with her bag. She has used racial slurs. She is disrupting the flight. Per FAA regulations, she is the one who should be removed. Why are you asking me for my credit card? Don't you quote regulations to me, son," the captain snapped. The word son was loaded with condescension. "I am the captain of this vessel. I have a passenger who feels threatened by your presence. Now, to keep the peace, I'm going to ask you to move." "Move where?" Marcus asked. "We have a seat in Economy Plus," the captain said. "Row 12. It has extra legroom. I will authorize a refund of the fare difference. Mrs. St. Clair is a frequent flyer with us, and she has priority in this cabin." Sarah, the flight attendant, gasped. "Captain, we can't—" "Quiet, Sarah," Anderson barked. He looked back at Marcus. "Grab your bag, sir. Let's go. Don't make me call the port authority." Victoria smirked. It was a twisted, ugly expression of triumph. She crossed her arms, staring down her nose at Marcus. "Go on," she taunted. "Back to the back of the bus where you belong." The silence in the cabin was suffocating. The businessman across the aisle looked ready to intervene, but he was watching Marcus. He was waiting for Marcus to explode, to yell, to give them a reason. But Marcus didn't explode. He stood up slowly. He was tall, 6'2", and when he stood to his full height, he towered over Victoria and the captain. He reached into his pocket. Victoria flinched, acting as if he were reaching for a weapon. "He's got a gun!" she screeched. Marcus pulled out a sleek, black metal card. It wasn't a credit card. It was an encrypted security clearance badge. "I'm not going to row 12, Marcus said. His voice was no longer just calm. It was the voice of a judge delivering a death sentence. "And I'm not showing you a credit card, Captain Anderson." "Then you are getting off my plane," Anderson said, reaching for his radio. "Police, now." "Yes," Marcus said. "Police are a good idea, but not for me." Marcus tapped his phone screen 3 times. He wasn't checking a ticket. He was dialing a direct line, a line that bypassed customer service, bypassed the gate agents, and rang directly on the desk of the Chief of Operations for Horizon Air in London. He put the phone to his ear. The cabin watched, mesmerized. "Hello?" Marcus said into the phone. "Yes, this is Thorne. Authorization code Alpha 9 Zulu King. Put me through to the tower and the dispatch center for JFK immediately." He paused, looking the captain dead in the eye. "Yes, I'm currently on Flight 492. We have a security incident involving the flight crew and a passenger. No, the passenger isn't the threat. The captain is." Victoria laughed, a nervous, high-pitched cackle. "Who do you think you're talking to? Your dealer?" Marcus ignored her. He spoke into the phone again. "Ground the plane. Nobody leaves this jet bridge. And get the airport police and the regional director down here. Tell them to meet me in the cockpit." He lowered the phone. Captain Anderson looked confused. "Who are you?" Marcus stepped forward, forcing Victoria to step back. "You asked for my credit card to prove I could afford the seat," Marcus said, his voice booming now, filling the first-class cabin. "I don't need a credit card, Captain, because I didn't buy the seat." He paused for effect. "I bought the airline." The silence following Marcus's declaration was not the silence of respect. It was the silence of disbelief. Captain Anderson blinked, his brain trying to process the absurdity of the statement. "I bought the airline." It was the kind of thing a lunatic said. It was the kind of delusion that confirmed, in Anderson's mind, that this man was mentally unstable and a danger to the flight. Anderson let out a short, derisive laugh. It was a dry, ugly sound. "You bought the airline," Anderson repeated, shaking his head. "Right. And I'm the King of England. Listen, pal, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, or what medication you forgot to take this morning, but you are done. You are finished." He grabbed his shoulder radio, clicking the button with aggressive force. "Operations, this is Captain Anderson on Flight 492, requesting immediate law enforcement officers to the gate. I have a disruptive passenger in first class refusing to deplane. He is making delusional claims of ownership and is hostile. I repeat, passenger is hostile." Victoria St. Clair preened. She smoothed the lapel of her white blazer, looking around at the other first-class passengers with a look of vindicated martyrdom. "Thank you, Captain," she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "Finally, someone is taking safety seriously. It's terrifying, honestly. Letting people like this onto the plane. You just never know what they're going to do." She turned her gaze to Marcus, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure malice. "Did you hear that? Police are coming. I hope you have a good lawyer. Although, public defenders are usually terrible, aren't they? I'm sure that's all you can afford." Marcus didn't look at her. He was looking at his watch, a Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime. He had kept it hidden under his hoodie sleeve, but now he checked it openly. 3 minutes, Marcus said calmly. 3 minutes until what? Anderson scoffed. Until the drugs wear off? 3 minutes until you lose your pension, Marcus replied. He didn't say it with anger. He said it with the factual indifference of a weatherman predicting rain. Suddenly, the flight deck communication system, which broadcasts into the cockpit but can be heard if the door is open, crackled with a static intensity that made everyone jump. "Flight 492, this is Tower. Captain Anderson, acknowledge." Anderson brought the radio to his lips. "Go ahead, Tower. Waiting on LEOs." "Captain Anderson, be advised." The voice from the tower was urgent, tight with stress. "Cancel police request for passenger in 1A. Repeat, cancel request. You are ordered to hold position. Do not move the aircraft. Do not engage further with the passenger in 1A. Company ground authority is boarding the bridge now. Code red priority." Anderson froze. "Code red? Tower, I have a hostile situation here. I need... Captain, stand down immediately." A new voice cut over the frequency. It wasn't the air traffic controller. It was a voice Anderson recognized. It was the chief pilot for the entire eastern seaboard. "Anderson, this is Chief Pilot Miller. Step away from the passenger. If you touch him, If you so much as look at him wrong, you will be facing federal charges. Do you copy?" The color drained from Captain Anderson's face so fast it looked like the blood had simply evaporated. He lowered the radio, his hand trembling slightly. Victoria, however, was oblivious to the nuances of pilot chatter. She only heard, "Cancel, police." "What do you mean, cancel, police?" she shrieked, stepping toward the captain. "Why are they cancelling the police? He's dangerous. He's sitting right there. Why is everyone being so incompetent?" "Shut up," Anderson whispered. It was a plea more than a command. "Excuse me?" Victoria gasped. "Did you just tell me to—" "I said shut up!" Anderson roared, turning on her, his eyes wide with a sudden, dawning horror. At that moment, the sound of running footsteps echoed down the jet bridge. Heavy, frantic footsteps. Sarah, the flight attendant who had been cowed into silence near the galley, pressed herself against the wall to make room. 3 men burst onto the plane. The first was a Port Authority police sergeant, hand resting on his belt, but not on his gun. The second was the gate agent, Greg, looking pale. The third man was wearing a suit that cost more than the captain's car, and he was sweating profusely despite the cool November air. It was David Vance, the regional director of operations for Horizon Air. Vance didn't look at the captain. He didn't look at Victoria. He looked straight at the man in the hoodie in seat 1A. Vance stopped, took a breath to steady himself, and bowed his head slightly. It was a gesture of submission. "Mr. Thorne," Vance said, his voice breathless. "I am so incredibly sorry. We didn't know. The manifest hadn't updated with your VIP status code yet because of the merger transition. I got the call from London 2 minutes ago." Marcus looked at Vance. He didn't stand up. He stayed seated, the king on his throne. "Mr. Vance," Marcus said, "good to see you. We have a problem on your airline." "We will fix it immediately, sir," Vance said, pulling a handkerchief to wipe his forehead. "Whatever you need." Victoria St. Clair was staring at the scene, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. Her brain was misfiring. This didn't fit her worldview. Men in hoodies get arrested. Men in suits give the orders. Why was the man in the suit bowing to the man in the hoodie? "Who are you?" Victoria demanded, stepping in front of Vance. "Why are you apologizing to him? He's a squatter. He's stealing my seat. I am Mrs. Richard St. Clair." Vance turned to look at her. His expression wasn't polite. It was the look of a man who was watching a bug crawl across a dinner plate. "Ma'am," Vance said, "you are speaking to the owner of this airline. Horizon Air was acquired by Thorne Holdings, effective 9:00 a.m. this morning. Mr. Marcus Thorne owns the plane, the fuel, the seats, and the very air you are currently wasting." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Victoria looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Victoria. He didn't smile. He simply raised an eyebrow. "Impossible," she whispered. "He look at him. He's what?" Marcus asked softly. "Go on. Finish the sentence. You were very vocal about it earlier." "What am I?" Victoria faltered. The reality was crashing down on her, but her ego was a fortress that wouldn't crumble easily. "You can't be. My husband says Thorne Holdings is a ghost company. You're lying. This is a prank. Someone is filming this." She looked around wildly for a camera crew. "Captain Anderson," Marcus said, shifting his gaze to the pilot who was now leaning against the cockpit door for support. "Yes, sir," Anderson stammered. "You were ready to have me arrested, based on the word of a disruptive passenger without checking my credentials, and after I informed you of a regulatory violation regarding her behavior. Is that correct?" "Sir, I was trying to de-escalate." "You failed," Marcus said. "You profiled me. You assumed that because I didn't look like your idea of power, I had none. You serve the passengers, Captain, not the bullies. You are relieved of command." "Sir?" Anderson choked. "Get your bag," Marcus said. "Get off my plane. You're suspended pending a formal inquiry into your conduct and your adherence to FAA anti-discrimination protocols. If you're lucky, you might fly cargo in a few years. But you will never fly passengers for me again. Go." It was brutal. It was swift. It was final. Captain Anderson, a man with 30 years of flying experience, looked at Vance for help. Vance looked at the floor. Anderson hung his head, turned, and walked back into the cockpit to grab his flight bag. When he emerged, he walked past Victoria without looking at her. A broken man. Marcus turned his eyes back to Victoria. "Now," he said. "About you." Victoria St. Clair had never been told no in her adult life. She had been told, "Wait a moment," or "We'll see what we can do," or "It will cost extra." But never no. She watched the captain, her supposed ally, evaporate from the situation. She was alone now. But she still had her card. She still had the name. "You can't kick me off," she said, though her voice trembled. "I have paid for this ticket. I have a contract of carriage. If you remove me, my husband will sue you for everything you have. Do you understand? We will bury you in litigation for decades." Marcus finally unbuckled his seatbelt. He stood up. He stepped into the aisle, closing the distance between them. "Sarah," Marcus said to the flight attendant. "Yes, Mr. Thorne?" Sarah chirped, standing straighter than she ever had in her life. She was loving this, every second of it. "What is the company policy regarding passengers who assault other passengers or crew?" Sarah recited it from memory. "Zero tolerance, sir. Immediate removal. Potential lifetime ban depending on severity." "And did Mrs. St. Clair assault me?" "Yes, sir," Sarah said, loud and clear. "She struck you with her carry-on bag. Intentional contact. I saw it. Mr. Henderson in 1F saw it." The businessman across the aisle, Mr. Henderson, raised his hand. "I saw it. She swung the bag at him. Nasty hit, too." Victoria gasped. "I slipped. It was an accident. You are all lying." Marcus turned to the Port Authority sergeant. "Officer, you have a witness statement. You have the victim. Me. I'd like to press charges for assault." The sergeant nodded. "Yes, sir. That's sufficient cause for removal and detention." He stepped toward Victoria. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." "No!" Victoria screamed. She backed up, bumping into the bulkhead. "Do not touch me! This is insane! I am going to London. I have a gala." "You aren't going to London," Marcus said. "Not on my airline, and frankly, not on any airline." Marcus pulled out his phone again. He began typing. "What are you doing?" Victoria demanded. "Calling your gang?" "I'm updating the Global Alliance security database," Marcus said without looking up. "Since I own Horizon, and Horizon is a partner in the Star Connect Alliance, I have administrative privileges. I'm flagging you as a Level 4 security risk. Violent behavior toward crew and passengers. By the time you get back to the terminal, that flag will have propagated to Delta, United, American, and British Airways." He looked up, his eyes hard. "You're walking home, Victoria." The blood drained from her face. A Level 4 flag was the no-fly list. It wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a travel death sentence. "You can't do that," she whispered. "My husband—" "Ah, yes, Richard," Marcus said. "Richard St. Clair. St. Clair Capital, right?" "Yes." She latched onto the name like a lifeline. "He manages billions. He will destroy you." Marcus smiled. It was a wolf's smile. "I know Richard," Marcus said. "I was actually reading a file on his firm in the lounge. He's over-leveraged on short positions in the tech sector. He's desperate for a liquidity injection. In fact, he's been begging my acquisition team for a meeting for 3 weeks. He wants Thorn Holdings to buy him out before he goes insolvent. Victoria froze. What? He didn't tell you? Marcus tilted his head. They never do. They want to keep the wife happy with the Chanel suits while the house burns down. Richard is broke, Victoria. Or he will be, very soon. Marcus dialed a number on speakerphone. The cabin was dead silent. The phone rang twice. Marcus, a voice answered. It was eager, desperate. I didn't expect to hear from you so soon. Did you get the proposal? We are ready to move on the terms you suggested. Hello, Richard, Marcus said. Victoria's eyes went wide. She recognized the voice. Richard, she screamed at the phone. Richard, tell him who we are. Victoria, Richard's voice sounded confused. Why are you with Marcus Thorn? He's on the plane, she yelled. He's attacking me. He's trying to kick me off. He's a thug, Richard. Destroy him. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Marcus, Richard said, his voice trembling. I apologize for my wife. She can be spirited. She called me a racial slur, Richard, Marcus said, and she assaulted me, and she tried to have me arrested. Oh, God, Richard groaned. She also mentioned that you have plenty of money to sue me, Marcus continued, which is interesting, because if you have money for lawsuits, you don't need my buyout. I don't do business with people who can't control their assets, and I definitely don't do business with people who think I belong in a zoo. Marcus, please, Richard begged. The firm, we need this. I will handle her, I promise. Put her on. Marcus held the phone out toward Victoria. She stared at it. The realization of what she had done was crashing down on her with the weight of a falling skyscraper. She took the phone with a shaking hand. Richard, she whimpered. You stupid, arrogant woman. Richard's voice roared through the speaker, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. Shut your mouth. Do whatever he says. Get off the plane. If you blow this deal, if you bankrupted us because of your temper, I will divorce you and leave you with nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing. Victoria dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a thud. She looked at Marcus. The arrogance was gone. The superiority was gone. All that was left was a scared, aging woman in a suit she could no longer afford. Please, she whispered. Please, I have the gala. Officer, Marcus said, turning back to his book. Remove her. The Port Authority sergeant didn't wait. He grabbed Victoria by the arm. She didn't fight this time. She went limp, sobbing, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. She was dragged down the aisle, past the staring eyes of the passengers she had sneered at only minutes before. As she passed row 4, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire first-class cabin was applauding. Marcus didn't look up. He picked up his book. Sarah, he said. Yes, Mr. Thorn? Sarah appeared instantly, beaming. We're running 20 minutes late. Tell the tower we are ready for pushback, and open a bottle of the vintage Dom Perignon, a round for everyone in the cabin. On me. Right away, sir. As the cabin door closed, sealing out the crying sounds of Victoria St. Clair, Marcus finally relaxed. He looked out the window at the rainy tarmac. He saw a police cruiser flashing its lights. He saw Victoria being shoved into the back seat. Karma hadn't just hit her. It had run her over, backed up, and run her over again. But the story wasn't over. Because while Victoria was finished, the cleanup was just beginning, and Marcus had one more stop to make before he could rest. The flight to London was smooth, but the atmosphere inside the cabin had shifted irrevocably. The tension of the confrontation had been replaced by a strange, almost euphoric camaraderie among the passengers and crew. It was the feeling of survivors who had weathered a storm together. Marcus didn't go to sleep immediately. He couldn't. His mind was racing, not with anger at Victoria St. Clair, she was a variable he had already solved, but with the structural problems of the airline he had just purchased. If the captain was that quick to judge, and the crew was that terrified to intervene, the corporate culture was rotten. He opened his laptop. He began typing a new memo. Project Reset. Cultural overhaul of Horizon Air. Mr. Thorne. Marcus looked up. It was Mr. Henderson, the businessman from seat 1F. He was holding a glass of the vintage Dom Perignon Sarah had poured. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Henderson said, gesturing to the empty seat across the aisle, the seat Victoria had fought so hard for. "May I?" "Please," Marcus said, closing his laptop slightly. "And call me Marcus. Mr. Thorne sounds like my father." Henderson chuckled and sat down. He was a man in his 60s, wearing a suit that had seen better days, with kind eyes and shaking hands. "I'm Robert," he said. "Robert Henderson. I run a small logistics firm in Leeds. I just wanted to say, well, I wanted to thank you. I've been flying this route for 20 years. I've seen that woman, Mrs. St. Clair, on this flight before. She's always a terror, but nobody ever stood up to her. Not like that. Bullies only have power when we give it to them, Robert," Marcus said, taking a sip of water. "She mistook silence for permission." "She mistook you for nobody," Robert corrected. "That was the best part. When you pulled out that phone, honestly, I thought my heart was going to stop. You really bought the whole airline." "This morning," Marcus nodded. "We needed the transatlantic routes to complete our supply chain network. Horizon was failing financially. Now I know why. Bad leadership at the top trickles down. Captain Anderson was a symptom, not the disease." Robert took a long sip of his champagne. "Well, you have a loyal customer in me for life now. But I have to ask, what happens when we land? Richard St. Clair is a powerful man in London. He's got connections in the city. If he decides to make this ugly, he can bury the story. He owns half the tabloids." Marcus smiled. He turned his laptop screen toward Robert. "He might own the tabloids," Marcus said, "but he doesn't own the internet." On the screen was Twitter, X. The trending topics list for the United Kingdom and the United States was already updating. First Class Karen was trending at number 1. "I own this airline" was trending at number 2. "How?" Robert gasped. "We're over the Atlantic." "In-flight Wi-Fi is a beautiful thing," Marcus said, "and it seems the teenager in seat 3A has a very active TikTok account." Marcus pointed a few rows back. A young girl with purple hair was furiously typing on her phone, a devious grin on her face. She caught Marcus looking, gave him a thumbs up, and mouthed, 2 million views. "The video is already out," Marcus explained. "It captures everything. The slur, the bag swing, the captain's incompetence, and my reveal. By the time we land at Heathrow, Victoria St. Clair won't just be a banned passenger. She will be the most hated woman in the Western Hemisphere." Robert laughed, a genuine belly-shaking laugh. "Karma travels faster than the speed of sound." "Faster," Marcus agreed. "It travels at the speed of light." While Flight 492 cruised at 38,000 feet, the ground war had already begun. In a glass-walled office in the financial district of London, Richard St. Clair was staring at his computer screen with the look of a man watching a nuclear bomb detonate in slow motion. His phone was ringing off the hook. His email inbox was flooding at a rate of 50 messages a minute. The video was everywhere. It had started on TikTok, crossed over to Instagram Reels, and was now the lead story on TMZ and the Daily Mail online. The headline on the Daily Mail was brutal. "Airline Iris Horror. wife of financier Richard St. Clair, assaults new owner of Horizon Air in racist mid-air meltdown. Richard watched the video again. He watched his wife, the woman he had married for her social connections, screaming like a banshee at Marcus Thorne. Marcus Thorne, of all the people on the planet. Richard put his head in his hands. He had spent 6 months courting Thorne Holdings. His hedge fund, St. Clair Capital, was bleeding money. He had made bad bets on cryptocurrency and failed retail chains. He was leveraged to the hilt. The only way out, the only way to avoid bankruptcy and prison for fraud, was for Thorne Holdings to acquire his assets at a premium. He had a meeting scheduled with Marcus's team tomorrow morning. It was supposed to be the handshake deal that saved his life. And now, his wife had just assaulted the buyer. "Sir?" Richard looked up. His assistant, Jessica, was standing in the doorway. She looked pale. "What is it?" Richard snapped. "The board is on line 1, she whispered. "They've seen the video. They want to know if the acquisition is still happening." "Tell them yes," Richard lied, sweat dripping down his nose. "Tell them Marcus and I are old friends. It's a misunderstanding. I'll smooth it over." "Sir," Jessica hesitated. "Also, the bank called. They're calling in the margin loan on the penthouse. They said, given the reputational risk associated with the St. Clair name right now, they can't extend the credit line." Richard stood up, his legs shaking. "Get my car. I'm going to the airport." "But sir, the flight doesn't land for another 4 hours." "I don't care," Richard screamed, sweeping a stack of papers off his desk. "I need to be there when he walks off that plane. I need to beg on my knees if I have to. Get the car." Back on the plane, the mood had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sarah, the flight attendant, was walking down the aisle with a renewed sense of purpose. She stopped at seat 1A. "Mr. Thorne," she said softly, "I have the crew meal list for the return flight. But I was wondering, would you like anything else? Some tea? A pillow?" Marcus looked at her. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, but also the spark of hope. "Sarah, how long have you worked for Horizon?" 6 years, sir." "And how many times have you had to deal with passengers like Victoria?" Sarah looked down at her shoes. "Too many times, sir. Usually we're told to just apologize, to give them free miles. The management, the old management, they said the customer is always right, even when they're wrong. The customer is only right when they respect the people serving them," Marcus said firmly. "That changes today. I'm creating a new position, Director of In-Flight Standards and Crew Welfare. It pays double your current salary. You'll report directly to David Vance, but your job is to look out for the crew, to make sure no flight attendant ever has to feel unsafe or unsupported again." Sarah's eyes widened. Tears welled up in the corners. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Marcus smiled. "Yes," she beamed. "Yes, absolutely. Good. Now, go tell the rest of the crew, and tell them to relax. No more walking on eggshells." As Sarah walked away, floating on air, Marcus turned back to the window. The sun was setting over the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of purple and gold. It was beautiful, but the storm wasn't over. The landing in London would be the final act. Marcus knew Richard St. Clair would be waiting. He knew the press would be waiting. He closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. He remembered growing up in Chicago. He remembered the teachers who told him he wasn't smart enough for advanced calculus. He remembered the bankers who laughed at his first business loan application. He remembered every Victoria St. Clair who had ever looked at him and seen nothing but a stereotype. He wasn't doing this for revenge. Revenge is petty. Revenge is emotional. He was doing this for justice, and justice, unlike revenge, is cold, calculated, and absolute. The intercom dinged. The co-pilot's voice came over the speakers. Since Captain Anderson had been relieved of duty and was currently sitting in the jump seat in the cockpit, brooding in silence, the first officer was flying the plane. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Evans from the flight deck. We are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. The weather is rainy and 8 degrees Celsius. We'd like to extend a special welcome to our new CEO, Mr. Marcus Thorne. Sir, on behalf of the entire crew, welcome home. Cabin crew, prepare for landing." The plane banked left. The lights of London twinkled below, a sprawling grid of history and power. Marcus tightened his seatbelt. It was time to close the deal. Heathrow Airport, Terminal 3, the VIP arrival gate. Usually this area is quiet. It is reserved for diplomats, royalty, and the ultra-wealthy who pay for the privacy of the Windsor suite. Tonight, it looked like the red carpet at the Oscars if the Oscars were being held in a riot. Dozens of paparazzi were crowded behind the velvet ropes. Flashbulbs were popping. Reporters from Sky News, BBC, and CNN were jockeying for position. The story of the billionaire in the hoodie had captured the public imagination. It was a perfect Cinderella story, flipped on its head. The automatic doors hissed open. Marcus Thorne walked out first. He hadn't changed. He was still wearing the charcoal hoodie, the jeans, the sneakers. He carried his own backpack. Behind him walked David Vance, looking nervous, and a phalanx of airport security who were struggling to hold back the press. "Mr. Thorne! Mr. Thorne! Did she really hit you? Are you going to sue? How does it feel to own the sky?" The questions came in a wall of noise. Marcus didn't stop. He walked with a steady, purposeful stride, looking straight ahead. He wasn't there for the cameras. He was there for the man standing at the end of the hallway. Richard St. Clair looked like a ghost. His suit was rumpled. His tie was crooked. He was sweating so profusely that his hair was matted to his forehead. He stood alone. His usual entourage of assistants and lawyers was nowhere to be seen. Even they knew when to abandon a sinking ship. Marcus stopped 5 feet from Richard. The cameras went silent. The reporters sensed that the real drama was about to happen, and they lowered their microphones to capture the audio. Richard took a step forward. He tried to smile, but his lips quivered. "Marcus?" Richard croaked. His voice was dry, cracking. "Marcus, thank God you're here. Look, I saw the video. It's defenseless. Indefensible. I mean indefensible. She's unwell. You know, the stress. I'm going to send her to a facility. A long stay. We can move past this." Marcus stared at him. He didn't offer a hand to shake. "Hello, Richard," Marcus said. "About the acquisition," Richard rushed on, his eyes darting around nervously. "I know we had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, but I have the papers here, in my briefcase. We can sign right now. I'm willing to lower the asking price." 10%? No, 15% off. Just to show you how sorry I am. We can wrap this up tonight. Richard fumbled with his leather briefcase, his hands shaking so badly he dropped it. Papers spilled onto the floor. He scrambled to his knees to pick them up, a pathetic figure grasping for salvation on the dirty airport tile. "Leave it, Richard," Marcus said. Richard froze on his knees. He looked up. "What?" "There is no meeting tomorrow," Marcus said. His voice was amplified by the acoustics of the hall, carrying clearly to the press. "And there is no acquisition." Richard stood up slowly. "Marcus, you can't be serious. You need St. Clair Capital. You need our assets." "I analyzed your assets on the flight over," Marcus said. "Robert Henderson, a nice man in seat 1F, helped me look at some of the logistics. Your assets are toxic, Richard. You're holding bad debt wrapped in fancy marketing. I don't need your firm. And I certainly don't need the baggage that comes with your name." "You can't back out," Richard hissed, his desperation turning to anger. "We have a verbal agreement." "We had a conversation," Marcus corrected, "and then your wife assaulted me. She called me a racial slur. She tried to have me arrested. And when I called you, you didn't ask if I was okay. You didn't apologize. You told her to shut up and get the money. You care about the deal, Richard. You don't care about people. That's why your business is failing, and that's why I'm walking away." "If you walk away," Richard whispered, his face turning grey, "I'm finished. The creditors, they'll take everything. The house, the cars, the firm." "I know," Marcus said. "And frankly, Richard, I don't care." Marcus signaled to David Vance. "David, let's go. We have a company to run." Marcus stepped around Richard. "Wait." Richard grabbed Marcus's arm. Instantly, 2 large security guards stepped forward, but Marcus held up a hand. He looked down at Richard's hand on his hoodie. "I wouldn't do that," Marcus said softly. Richard let go as if he had touched a hot stove. "One last thing," Marcus said, turning back to him. "Victoria is currently in custody at JFK. She's going to be charged with assault and interfering with a flight crew. It's a federal felony. She's going to need a lawyer, a good one. I suggest you save whatever money you have left for her bail, although knowing you're probably already calling a divorce attorney." Richard didn't answer. He couldn't. He was watching his life incinerate. Marcus walked out of the terminal and into the cool London night. A black Range Rover was waiting. As he climbed into the back seat, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, the flight attendant. Text, "We just landed the return leg. The crew is celebrating. Best flight we've ever had." "Thank you, Marcus." Marcus smiled. He typed a quick reply. "You earned it." He looked out the window as the car pulled away. He saw Richard St. Clair surrounded by the press, shouting, "No comment, no comment," as flashbulbs blinded him. Marcus leaned back in the leather seat. He closed his eyes. He was tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that comes after cleaning up a mess that had been left for too long. He didn't own the world. He didn't want to. But he owned the airline, and from now on in his sky, everyone was going to be treated with respect, or they could walk. What a ride. Victoria St. Clair thought her status gave her the right to belittle a man she judged by his cover, but she learned the hard way that true power doesn't need to shout. Marcus Thorne didn't just win. He dismantled a toxic culture and saved an airline in the process. It's a brutal reminder. Treat the janitor with the same respect as the CEO, because you never know when the CEO might be wearing a hoodie. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a story about entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Marcus? Let's talk about it below. Thanks for watching.